Welcome to Get Morphed. I'm George. Today we're doing another episode with my friend Linda, who she had this idea that she wanted to talk about a pine cone. A pine cone. And what God was telling her through this pine cone. So that got me thinking that there was an episode that I had made about how life experience is connected to what we believe about life. And that episode is called Life Experience and Your Worldview. And Linda watched some of it, and we're going to play a portion of it because it sets up nicely what I think Linda's going to be sharing today. The connection between what she's experienced and her worldview, which is, her beliefs, and how that ties into her experiencing God. So we're going to play that clip.
Please.
Alrighty, and then you comment on take it from there, okay?
Take it from there.
We'll work it out.
We're going to start first with the four universal relationships. Everyone, everywhere, at all times has and has had a relationship to the environment. Everyone, everywhere has a relationship with other people, with themselves, and with the spiritual realm. These four relationships were by design because the book of Genesis and the rest of Scripture tells us God set things up this way.
I think that's as far as we need to go with this clip about how God has created these four relationships through which he communicates to us. There's a verse that clearly states how God has been using the environment to communicate to mankind. And that's in Romans chapter 1, verse 18 to 20. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So, it didn't stop at the Garden of Eden. This manifestation of God through creation did not stop, has not stopped. And for some people, it can get weird to talk about how God uses things in our environment, like a bumper sticker or a sign, an ad. All of a sudden you see an ad that says, God loves you. I've experienced those things where all of a sudden, there it is, a sign, especially in this Lancaster County where Christianity has
a strong
presence.
Yes.
So it doesn't surprise me to see things like that. But some people think that gets spooky and weird to think that God was somehow in that situation, or maybe a song comes on the radio that you don't expect, and it may be a country western song, it may be a rock song, something that suddenly
you connect with.
Yes, and gives you a boost. So is that sort of what happened with you in the Pinecone?
Yes, I would say it is, but in a much reduced, simpler way. It took me a while to even begin to think about relating the Pinecone to God and his infinite majesty. I mean, it's a pine cone. I don't think God lives in the pine cone. No, what I think is that through his blessings, his grace, that he has let me look at the pine cone and say, wow, you know what? Hello, you little thing, you. Because I've been watching this pine cone for 6 weeks. Now, please, don't run and get the guys in the white jackets. Come on, give me a break. Off and on. It's because it's a place I set. And it's up on the second floor of where I live. And it's a patio over the first floor. And the patio drops off down from the second to the first floor to a hard surface driveway in a traffic area. So me and this pine cone were up on the roof, and I'm just looking at it because I didn't have anything else to look at. And I realized one day, I looked at it, well, that's funny, that's not the same position it was. Oh, big rocket science that I am. It finally dawned on me, well, because the wind's blowing, so it's moving it. But the fact that over time, over the days, that little pine cone moved just a little bit this way and a little bit that way. And what it was is it corresponded to my ups and downs. It was like I said, oh. And then I looked at the pine cone and it was facing a little different direction. So it was like, maybe you should be facing in a little bit different direction. And over the weeks, I watched this pine cone move where at one point it actually spun around and its stem was pointing in the other direction. And it also, you can't see it here, but it got closer to that edge where it would fall off. It didn't fall off. So, speeding ahead, now this is weeks of watching this pine cone. And as you know, and anyone that lives in the Lancaster area knows the storms in the last week or so have been violent. And, it's just the wind and the rain. It's like incredible. So I guess it was the end of last week. I went out after one of the storms, and the pine cone, I'm not kidding you, actually had moved in the wind, was so strong, the pine cone actually moved like 6 feet closer to the wall, to the house, to protection. And I thought to myself, what a miracle God is letting me see. It's not burning bushes or anything. It's the miracle of looking at this little pine cone, struggling, surviving, getting through, making changes to survive. And that spoke to me. That said to me, you know what? If that pine cone can do it, I can do it. I can do it. That's what God's letting me see. He's letting me see I can do it. And that was a small gift just to me. That's what God has given me. This is what asking Him into my life has accomplished, so that when I go and I hit those spots that I just want to say, you know what? Fine, I give up. Maybe not right that minute, but I'll go out and sit outside and there will be that pine cone. And that pine cone's still there, hanging in there. And that's God. I think that's God's message. That's how I feel God's message is to me. You're a pine cone. You're that pine cone. That pine cone is surviving. And you will survive too. With God's help, I will survive all the little dings and dangs and downs. I will survive the downs and I will enjoy the ups. That's what that pine cone tells me. To enjoy the ups, survive the downs. And let God let me smile. He lets me smile about things like that. What a blessing. I just want to let people know that the joy of asking God into your life isn't measurable. It's not measurable by inches or feet or how far a pine cone travels. It isn't even measurable by the success or failure of your life. No. It isn't measured because it can't be measured. God's love and His blessing really cannot be measured with a tape measure or whatever. It can be measured by your heart and your soul with God in your life. Because sometimes it hurts out there. I've had a lot of adjustments to make in my life recently. And some of them are, I put my pouty lip out. But then, there's that pine cone. So I do think that God does work through the environment to help us, to teach us, to let us smile and let us be grateful for Him in our lives, that we can see this now. So yeah, I do think God works that way. You know, it's a little way. It's a little way.
So, is it, you think it's weird to start seeing God in everything?
Well, let's not get carried away here.
That's where I'm going with that.
Okay, yeah.
Where do you draw the line? Where do you think we should draw the line in where, because some people will get carried away, right? They'll see,
right.
Just like they see the devil in under every rock, so to speak. The devil's this, the devil's that.
Yes, I'm not running out.
The spirit of this and the spirit of that.
Please, I do not want everybody to run out and look for pine cones. No, that's not what I'm saying.
So, like, some people might...
Back to reality, Chip.
Some people might see a pine cone fall, and suddenly they think, I'm going to fall. That's God telling me I'm going to have a fall. Right? That's, gosh, I just came off the tree. I'm separated from the tree. I'm going to...
Right.
Yes, so that would be an example of taking something like this too far,
yes.
Right?
Well, as I've stated, it's a pine cone. It is not a horoscope or a way of life. No. It is a little thing. Your life is encompassed by many little things. This is not the only one. So the reality of your life is when you get up and you leave the porch and you go back and you deal with your reality. The reality that says...
Well, the other relationships that I've mentioned, right? Because the physical is just one of the 4 relationships that God created for us to live in.
Right, because we don't live in the
pine cone world.
Right, in a pine cone.
So we have other people, we have ourselves, and we have our relationship with God.
We have problems and to deal with. We have reality to deal with. We have a lot of stuff to deal with.
So I guess what I'm getting at, in part, is that sometimes these kinds of insights, you were responding to somehow this pine cone, and you said it well. It was a gift to you. I wasn't there. You folks weren't there, but it was something that connected with her. And I think a big part of why she was able to get something out of this particular object lesson is because she's been in an attitude of, God, I'm here to learn. I want to learn. I'm a follower. I'm a disciple.
I'm a believer.
And a disciple. There's a key word there, disciple. Because a disciple is someone who commits themselves to be taught.
Oh, okay.
It's a life, as it was in Jesus' day, when you committed yourself to a rabbi, to a teacher, you were saying, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to be in your shadow all the time because I'm going to learn from you. So that is the same mindset that we should have, but it's not communicated as clearly from the pulpit, although some preachers I've heard do a really great job of teaching discipleship. But and you may be in a church that does that, and that's great. So you should be able to understand better what the idea of discipleship is. But for Linda, who's discovering this new world of being a Christian, the idea that God can be teaching you through all these things is just awesome. And it shouldn't, for us seasoned Christians, it shouldn't surprise us. It shouldn't be weird that God would use a pine cone. It shouldn't be weird if he uses a song out of the blue, quote unquote, or a license, or a bumper sticker, or a signpost, an ad in a billboard. It shouldn't be weird, but unfortunately, because of how it's been misused by the New Age movement and by some charismatic people who get really strange, and as I said, there are some, particularly from the charismatic movement, who I could very well see take something like this and start reading their life through all kinds of events in the world. But that's where you need balance. You need the other relationships. You need the relationship of other people in your life. You need that relationship of your self-talk as you talk to the Lord in prayer. So
you need the relationship of somebody saying, "You're going to stand on that roof forever?"
Hey, time to get off that roof. Time to leave that pine cone alone.
And I do want to just put a little, you were saying about it. This is my experience. And yeah, this is just me telling you how, what kind of floors me a little bit? Is that God takes the trouble, the time, to let me see that he loves me enough to take the time. Because that hasn't happened a lot in my life lately. So, it is a little, I'm making it sound a lot more overwhelming, but in the moment, for me, just me and God, it is overwhelming.
So we would hope that you would be open to these moments that will be tailor-made by God for you, and
They're called holy moments.
Yeah, a holy moment where you would just understand in an instant the depth, the height, the depth, the breadth of God's love, which is immeasurable, as Linda said. Mm-hmm. Well, I think this might be a good place to wrap up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to overwhelm folks. God lets you smile, makes you smile, brings a smile to your face. And that joy that you're experiencing was promised to us as part of our abundant life for being in communion with the Lord, in a covenant relationship with Him, for being willing to do what Romans 12:1 says, which is submit yourselves to the Lord, putting yourself on the altar, a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. That's what Romans 12:1 says. And then following that, if you have taken that step, then he goes on to say, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, which is pleasing and perfect. So, Thank you for joining us. If you have enjoyed this content, please hit the thumbs up and leave a comment. That really helps. And of course, if you're not a subscriber, we'd love you to be a subscriber, and you'll be part of the Get Morphed community, which is now 35 strong. And so we hope this has been a blessing to you.
Yes. Been a blessing to me.
We'll see you at our next conversation. Bye.